Greetings, people of Earth. My name is Jax, and welcome back. So, as you can probably tell by the title, today we are talking about an old book. And by old, I mean like 10, 15 years old. But we're talking about The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. The reason we're talking about this book is because if you know me, you know that this book has been incredibly influential in my life. And I thought this whole YouTube channel, the whole point of it is to give people a good insight into who I am and to try and help with positivity and seeing the world in a new light. And this book definitely did that for me. So I wanted to sort of explain my history with the book, give a bit of a book review, talk a bit about the movie and sort of the repercussions of it from my life, and basically go from there. So if that's something you're interested in, here we go. So basically, I read this book before the movies had come out. I know that sounds very hipster of me, like, oh, I was into it before it got popular. But a friend of mine gave me the original book of it. I don't know where I have it, but she gave me the original book of it before they had announced that it was going to turn into a film. And so I read it and was totally obsessed with it, and subsequently like read the other two books in the series, in the trilogy. And then the whole movie hype came about by it, and you know, it was all swept up in this huge thing. It broke box office records. It was all crazy. But there was a period when I got to read this book and there wasn't any hype about it. There wasn't any like craziness. I had like this distinct image of what the characters looked like in my head, and I got to imagine it all for myself before I got to see it on the big screen. And I'm someone who absolutely loved the movies. I really enjoyed the adaptation. Obviously there were some changes, but there's always changes. So this book, I think I started reading this book at 12, something along there, and it was really the first piece of literature that I fell in love with. It was the first book series that I read the whole way through within a week or two. I became like very, very obsessed with it. I'd always been into like archery and many of like the subjects that the film or the books talk about. So it had always been kind of like this, I don't know, it was this moment for me. I really resonate with Katniss as a character. I think, you know, like she's very independent. She's very survivalist mindset. She didn't have a lot of friends. She came from like this very sort of simple background where she knew what she wanted. Pretty modest background, pretty simple. You know, there's a scene where she seems so sheltered and everyone's kind of making fun of her for being so sheltered, but it's because she's had to like provide for her whole family and essentially like be super focused on what she's doing. So I don't know, I admire her as a character. I relate to her in many ways. I would be lying if I didn't say that like Peeta was a huge draw for me as a character. Just that idea of like charismatic compassion, just gentle-heartedness, kind nature. And you know, he's trying to survive in this really harsh world, this really difficult environment. I mean, Katniss is as well, but for Peeta it's like doubly hard because he's trying to like, you know, at one point he says to Katniss, he's like, I just don't want them to change me. And you know, those kinds of like ideas of like being altered or changed by the society, and you know, trying to stay true to yourself. Like as a young like tween, I was like, that was like all I was interested in, you know, as we're changing and going through like societal change and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was definitely like a huge cultural moment. It was like a really big moment in my life. It was like a lot of things were changing in my life at that point, starting like middle school and then high school. Yeah, there was a lot going on in my life at that point, like so much actually, looking back and thinking about it. And this book was like safety. This book was a place that I could go and disconnect from everything happening and everything going on. And I don't know, even to this day, like I will rewatch and I will reread and I will listen to the audiobooks. Like I will go back, and this show and this book is like my comfort object, essentially. Oh my gosh, there's like a little fly. Sorry. ADD going crazy, but it's fine. Yeah, so that was like, that's what the Hunger Games meant to me, in terms of its meaning, its impact, many of those things. I think it shaped a lot of like how I want to perceive myself and how I want to treat people. The book itself is incredibly well written. I love it. It's from Katniss's perspective. She is this young girl who lives in a post-apocalyptic, dystopian world where her father has been killed in a mining accident, and she is basically the sole provider for her little sister and her mother. There is starvation and poverty and, rampant abuse. The dictatorial government controls everybody and forces everybody to watch this horrific spectacle called the Hunger Games, where a bunch of the youth of the country are essentially put into a gladiatorial arena and they fight to the death, and it's all televised. And yeah, it's pretty graphic. It's pretty violent. I don't think I would let young children watch it. It's not the kind of thing that's appropriate for them. And like I said, it's very well written. It's yeah, it's dark. Like, looking back on it, it is not it's not a fantastic representation of like all of human achievement. One of the things, basically, I'll just continue. So, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched The Hunger Games or you haven't read the books, go do that. But if not, here we go. I'm about to spoil the entire thing. So, Katniss with her, what would you say, fellow gladiatorial contestant, Peeta, who's also from her small town, they go into the Hunger Games and they end up winning. Usually only one person's supposed to win, but they both win because they have this fake romance that is played through, and they sort of play it up for the cameras, and all the audience loves it, and so they both end up winning. And it becomes apparent that the country is not happy that they have won. They are very angry that they've been made to look like fools, and so Katniss and Peeta have to pretend to be in this relationship, or else the whole country could revolt. If everybody learns that their relationship was a hoax, or it was just for the cameras, then it makes the country, like the dictator, look really stupid. And so they basically have to continue this ruse. But the problem in that is that Peeta has actually fallen in love with Katniss, and it's debated he might have always been in love with her. And she can't think of him that way because she's just trying to survive. She has this survivalist mindset, so she's not even thinking about love or any of those kinds of things. And in the second book, they get put back in the Hunger Games, which is, really shocking. And one of the things that happens is that Katniss actually kind of falls in love with Peeta, and she's kind of surprised by it, and it takes her off guard, and she doesn't really know what's happening. And at the end of the second games, most of the other tributes are dead, and Katniss is taken by the rebellion because the government's going to get overthrown, and Peeta is taken by the dictator government. And so then, the final book is about Katniss trying to get Peeta back and all this other stuff. And I have to say, one of like the huge pulls for me for the Hunger Games trilogy in general is the relationship between Peeta and Katniss, because I think both characters really highlight like kind of the best of humanity. They both have different traits. Peeta sees the best in everybody. Katniss prepares for the worst. And both of those traits are incredibly human, and I think they're both justified in how they act and how they live their lives. But it's really neat to see their interactions and how they sort of debate different issues and how they see the world, because they still have some like commonality, and a lot of commonality. They both grow up in poverty and difficult circumstances, and yet they have very different reactions to it, which is, I think, very interesting. And I think you could do a lot of psychology on just the Hunger Games in general. So yeah, I think that's kind of the most interesting thing in my opinion. The relationship and the what is it, budding romance is incredibly appealing to me. It's something that, like, as a young kid I was absolutely drawn into. I have been team Peeta forever. I thought Peeta was just like the most incredible guy ever. And I don't know, you just get to see Katniss like truly fall in love with him and feel safe with him. And it's just very pure, you know, like for all of like the darkness and the hardship that the characters go through, their romance and like them falling in love is just very pure, and it's very sweet. And Katniss really doesn't know how to explain it, and Peeta doesn't know how to explain it. He's just like, I feel this, like, you know. And you know, there's a lot of hardship. There's a lot of characters that don't make it, which is so sad because some of them are so incredibly inspiring and so good. um, but that's life, you know. Like, I do think that the books highlight some of the best and worst of humanity, and they do it in such a good story. The world is so well thought out and well flushed out that you really feel like this could happen in the future, because, you know, basically this dystopian world has happened because our civilization has failed. We climate change and war and all of this stuff, and the result is the world that Katniss and Peeta inherit. And it's also like, it's very apparent when you watch the movies, because they do a really good job of explaining that like, you know, you kind of reap what you sow. And our society does things that could potentially lead us to one day doing this. And they talk about the books deal with like celebrity culture. They deal with kind of the whole social media aspects in a very kind of interesting way. um, they deal with like the cult of celebrity and reality television. Like, there's so many of these aspects to of our daily lives that are really talked about and discussed in a meaningful way. And so I really recommend this to anybody. And I could go on for hours about, you know, the nuances and different events and things like that. But um, at the end of the day, like, I don't know, it depicts humans at their worst and their best. It depicts how staying positive and, you know, achieving your goals with no matter what you need to do to achieve them can actually make them happen. um yeah, there's just a lot there to unpack. And so I don't know, I just wanted to make this and basically be like, I really like this, I think you should watch it, I think you should read it. um it's definitely a huge inspirational thing for me. um in terms of like how I see the world, it has certainly shaped how I do and how I interact. um and so yeah, I wanted to like come on here and just rave about it a little bit. um who knows who's gonna watch a YouTube video of a book review of a book from like 15 years ago. But um I don't know, I think it's an amazing book, and Suzanne Collins is amazing. I'm looking forward to the new thing that's coming out, the Ballad of Snake and Songbird. I've read the book. I'm looking forward to the movie. It's a prequel from way before the time of Katniss and Peeta. But yeah. Anyway, guys, I would love to hear your opinions. I could gush about this book, so I'm looking forward to the comments and the discussion down below. And as always, I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Go read it. I swear it's good.